A lot of people are speculating about the future of the economy with AI, and the answer comes up: who's going to pay taxes if nobody has jobs? How are people going to survive if nobody has jobs? Well, let me start at saying that no society is going to let 80% of its people starve to death. Well, no modern democratic society is going to let 80% of its people starve to death because AI is taking all its jobs. And that wouldn't work economically anyways because businesses need something to sell to. I've given a recent example of something that was like universal credit that happened that will give you an idea of how the economy, I think, will likely evolve. When COVID hit, governments around the world were terrified about the economic collapses would happen, particularly, not only unemployment, but they were worried about what would happen to stock equity values. Most of the industrial governments around the world went into giving money available to consumers to spend while they weren't able to make revenue to get through the COVID period. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is the governments were able to issue these checks. Between the money and the credit does exist. There's seriously a debt problem, but even with that, major Western economies were able to start sending checks to people who weren't working, and they were able to spend money. And that was able to keep the economy from collapsing. The problem, though, was that because productivity had gone down because of restrictions with COVID of humans not being able to interact with other humans, there was supply chain issues. And in the years after COVID, we got a big spike in inflation, which was predictable. So we could implement a universal credit system right now. The problem, though, is that if this caused a large number of people to drop out of the economy, it would be inflationary. Really, for all the complaining people have about jobs, in the West, unemployment is still very low relative historically. We are still using a high proportion of people to do jobs, and even with the IT cutting lots of white-collar jobs, there still is a need for skilled people to work. There still are jobs out there. Okay? As AI makes it possible to do more and more productivity without humans, and this is going to take longer than people are expecting. Right now, yeah, LLMs can do a lot of great stuff, but they're chatbots. It's going to take a while to start automating email processes, doing triggers, testing, deploying, building confidence in it work. There's going to be development projects. Developers are going to be consumed for a long period in doing the development work for building systems that will replace them, but that's always been their job for good, right? So we do have a model for how the economy would work, and we know the reason we can't do it right now is that because if we started like 30% reduction in the employed people right now because of, say, COVID, and we pay them money to get through that period, it will cause inflation because of the lost supply chain capacity of those unemployed people. But in the future, with a combination of robotics and Internet of Things and AI, which I think is going to take a bit longer than people are thinking right now, we will be able to automate more and more of not only the information economy, but even the manual economy, in that we'll still be able to produce goods to meet the demand even with less workers. So we already have run the model. The question then has to be is, well, where's the money going to come from? Okay? But when you stop to think about it, okay, if government pays universal credit to people, the people then purchase things. This keeps the economy circulating, and then that generates tax revenues. And if you know anything about money multiplier, what happens to money as it gets spent and spent and spent, every dollar, ultimately, every transaction you take a little piece of tax, then that dollar, then that dollar, then that dollar. At some point, everything spent becomes tax revenue. Okay? This is not, I don't mean to say that I'm heavy socialist. I think we really need to still make sure we have an economy of meaningful employment. And what I think AI will ultimately do is generate lots of new jobs and make it much faster for innovation. I also think we're going to get a great efficiency improvement in that we're not going to have to be spending as much money paying very highly paid technical experts who are simply converting things from use cases into code or running a legal assessment on a document or processing a spreadsheet and creating an assessment. These are things that these people who can do these kind of rare jobs, this is not, that's the thing. AI is good at doing things that aren't common amongst humans, that are rare. And the people who have these talents often could demand high wages because most human beings are not good at this kind of stuff, okay? But the economy has been held up because of the kind of things that AI is good at, humans are not good at. And we've had to pay huge amount of money to people to do these things. This has kept a lot of people in the middle class, yes, but it's also been a drain on the economy so that there hasn't been money for other things. And I don't foresee or hope that we'll have a society just on universal basic assistance with very few people working. That would be actually terrible, I think, at least in the medium term. Maybe if the cultural changes it would benefit, but people would lose value, they would become bored, this would lead to criminal activity, drug usage. There would be all kinds of problems of people just sitting around. Most people don't know what to do with themselves, even with a full-time job. Okay? But there's another point on this one, if you stop to think about it, as more and more people go on a universal basic assistance kind of thing. And we're assuming that this is more than enough to keep them from just basic necessities, but it's enough to give them some consumable income. Suddenly, there is a need to provide these people with things for the growing amount of free time they have, right? Now, initially, there'll be drug dealers and stuff and sex workers and things like that. And potentially we may change our view on sex work and things to make that much more legitimate work, which ethically I think probably is something we should consider. But there'll also be legitimate. People will have more time to spend in coffee houses, more time to spend in theaters, more time to engage in recreational activities. There'll be more opportunities that will engage human-centric types of activities as people are not spending the insane amount of time. Because you think about how much human potential consumption is completely drained into capitalist activity. I mean, think about it like you get up in the morning, okay, okay, so you've got to go onto a train. So there's the whole massive economic infrastructure that's consumed in moving you from place to place, and you're sitting on the commuting. People are routinely commuting over an hour to get to work every day, sitting on that. You're going into the office. Maybe you pick up a cup of coffee on the way in. If you don't bring your own lunch, you go and you eat lunch or you eat in the cafeteria. So there's lots of these businesses targeted at feeding people, essentially cafeteria style meals. And then it's an hour when you get home, and then you get home and it's in the evening. Maybe you go out once or twice a week, but normally you're pretty exhausted. Your creative potential as you're sitting there working as a consumer is vastly reduced, okay? And because of how much of the economy is going into having to pay these expert skills, the recreational are often really very expensive. We only have so much economic potential to invest in development of things, and restaurants don't have the capital to invest in vastly increasing their efficiency unless they're McDonald's, to try and reduce costs to get people to do more four-star dining. If I have a restaurant that produces four-star cuisine, it's going to cost me a lot of money, but so I have to charge to some very, very premium people. If I was to say I have an idea that I could use robots to produce same quality 4-star cuisine with the same staff, but feed 5 times as many people and reduce the cost so that anybody can eat 4-star cuisine. It would be very hard to get funding for that. Okay, it would be very tricky. And at current technology, it probably wouldn't be doable. With AI, it probably will be doable. Okay, so we can start thinking about, you'll be able to get 4-star Michelin 4-star cuisine for the cost of going to McDonald's. McDonald's when it's cheap, not when it's expensive, by the way. Or you'll be able to attend well, just about anything. You'll be able to have custom clothes made for you by the finest tailor for the same cost as going right now to a chain store. All of these things will become possible with the deployment of robotics and AI, which will open up more and more economic opportunities. So there's a long chain in there of productive growth, okay? But I think that the ideal that just everybody is going to be impoverished, starving, begging, if that happens, it won't be because of the technology. It will be because of a huge political and ethical failure of our society.